Hi there, good morning. I'm Cody Hendrickson, and today we're going to be looking at how we can create an XCode project and organize it so we can make an iOS app and the basic setup to go along with that. So let's go ahead, and we're obviously using a Mac to do this, to make a project. We'll go ahead and just start up XCode. And so just type in XCode, open it up. As you can see right here, we have our Welcome to XCode screen. Now, right now I'm working with version 11.3. Other versions will be a little bit different, but you want to make sure you have the basic approach right here. And this is going to be using a Swift UI interface. So we'll go ahead and start that off. So I'll create a new Xcode project. Again, every time we make a project inside Xcode, I'm always going to be using the default approach of using a single view app. That's the way I'll do it for every single project I make. So I'll go ahead and just click on single view app and then go to next. For product name, you want to use a single name with no spaces to make it easy so it works with GitHub and goes from there. And so just do sample demo project, sample UI demo. And again, it just gives that right there. So it has the bundle organization name and organization identifier. These would be customized for your project. Obviously, I'm here at CTech, so that's what I use for mine by default. The language will be Swift, and the user interface is the new Swift UI, because we want to actually use what is the official standard for that. Now, if we're doing a bigger project, we'd obviously include our unit tests and our UI tests, but just to start off, we're not going to worry about the testing for that, nor core data, but we'll go from there to get started. We go ahead and click next then. And this is telling us where do we want to save our projects. I recommend making a single repository or folder on your system that you can save all of your projects for iOS dev. In this case, as you can see, I've been working with my 2019 course where I had all my AM Swift projects stored in that. But you want to make a folder that you can hold for that. As you can see right here, mine's inside my documents folder. Great spot to have that, or a dev folder, and then have an iOS folder for inside of that. But you just want to make sure it's easy and right there. Now, I do not checkbox the source control because I'll handle Git repository on my own through GitHub. Just have it right there, and then click create. Here we have the beginnings of our project. Our project right now is ready to go. If I do Command R and run, this will automatically build a straight up project that it'll just run and do nothing, but hey, it's there. It starts the simulator immediately, and we can even see what our app looks like just by starting what happens in the bare bones start up a project and ready to go. We'll get that loaded right here. As you can see, it says launching sample UI demo. We alt tab, we can see that the simulator icon is open right here, so it's saying it's ready to load. And we're going to load that iOS Max, and then boom, here's that blank screen, and in a couple seconds we'll get a hello world without having even done anything on our own. See, we've got hello world. We made our project, it does nothing, but it's there, it works. Let's go ahead and take a close look at what we're doing though. So inside our actual project, we want to talk about the actual structure of Xcode and how we're going to be using it. You can see it's a very complex user interface, and we'll be using it on a regular basis, but we want to make sure we talk about the different pieces that we're working with. Over here on the left is we have our navigator pane. As you can see at the top of Navigator pane, there's a bunch of different sub-panes within it that we can click on. The one we're going to start off the most though and work with, especially to start off with, is the Project Navigator. It's the folder structure for our project. And that's where all the organization of our code happens on a structural level, how we put our projects together. The next pane we have over is our editor pane, and this is where we actually show the code that we're working on currently. We then have our canvas or our preview pane, and as you can see, if I click the resume button right there, we can see what's happening for my project to start off with. Since I have selected right now my content view class. And my content view will give me a preview of what we're working with. It does take a couple seconds to demo that up and have it be running right here, but it'll give us a demo and we can see a live view of what's happening inside our code or our GUI as that's happening. And that'll show up right here. The next pane we have over is our inspector pane, and there's a variety of inspectors we can look at. So if you hover over these, it tells you what different inspectors we're looking at: the quick help, the attributes inspector, history inspector, and the document inspector. And that's how we can see detailed information about different things. And so right here, you can see this is my preview pane. I can take out hello world, and I say soft hello world, and there we go. It has an immediate canvas preview of what we're working with, and we can go from there. But that's just the beginning of what we're doing. We want to actually go and set up our project so we can actually get this ready to go and build better projects as go along with that. So let's take a look at what we need to do for that. The first thing we need to do is we need to go over to our navigator window, and we need to organize our folder structure so it works, so we have a clean delineation of our project, and we have our files organized by what we're going to be working with and how we need to work with them. So we're going to go ahead and just minimize this out of the way because we don't need to see it. We don't even need to see this one right here, so I'll go ahead and close this window up here. So I'm going to go up to my editor pane, and I'm going to take off the canvas. I don't need to show that. And I'm going to drag this out so it's a little bit bigger just so we can focus on that over here on the left. And as we look through this, this is how we're going to organize our project. So the first thing we need to do is we need to put some folders in here or groups so we can actually organize the code that we'll be working with. And we're going to use the model view controller and resources structure that we'll use throughout the entire year in this. So MVC is something you may have heard before, model view controller. It's the standard approach we use for software development in my class. But we'll also add a resources folder so we can hold the stuff that we need for the project, but we don't need to really work with that often. So it's just like a little shove it off to the side and don't have to worry about it. A little boxing as you were. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm inside my project folder right here. And I add a couple different things. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on appdelegate.swift, scenedelegate.swift, assets.xcassets, and info.plist. And I'm going to right click on these 4 items and choose new group from selection. I'm going to put this in the resources folder. And so that resources folder is how I'm organizing that code because I don't need to work with it very often, but I do have a couple things I have to do. Because if I simply just run my project right now, I'm going to stop the demo and rerun it, it's not going to be able to compile. Because when I move those folders into a new structure, it doesn't know where that info.plist has been moved to, because info.plist tells the project how to actually load and run everything. So I have to go make a change for that. So the first thing I do after I make that resources folder is I need to go up to my project properties, which is the blue icon at the very top. And I'm going to go to the build settings section of that. Now you can type in just info.plist right here, and it'll take you right here to the packaging section, or you can just search for packaging as well. And as you can see in the packaging section, there's an info.plist file section right here. And what we need to do is we need to say, oh, that's sample UI demo / info.plist, but I moved it inside the sample UI demo folder into a resources folder. So I just need to add inside this plist section, I need to add a folder saying it's inside the resources folder. So I just edit that and add resources. Remember, case matters in Unix land, so make sure it's spelled the exact same way as you have it spelled right here. Always watch your spelling as well. Press enter and save. And if I hit Command R to rerun my build succeeds, my error message goes away, and there we have again my existing project ready to go. Now you notice it took a lot less time to run my project the second time than it did the first time. Running your project over and over again makes it so it starts a lot faster. And so it's a good idea to often build your project once at the very beginning and then incrementally rebuild as you go along. It makes life a lot happier. Well, let's go ahead and go back to Xcode though. Now that I've gone and I've edited that info.plist file, inside that's how I know where to find the info.plist file inside the project properties. I don't need to do anything with that again, so I'm going to close my resources folder, and I can just not have to worry about that. We have a couple files inside here we will have to worry about later. The assets.xcassets is how I put Xcode assets into here. This would be like music files, PDFs, and other documents that go within my project, and I'd add them inside this, and we'll talk about that in other videos, how we can actually reference those components and add them into the file so we can use them. But that's where the GUI, this is where all of the interactivity elements, things like images, documents, etc. get stored so we can access them easily inside our code. The scenedelegate and appdelegate.swift files are not going to be used for the majority of our projects. These are the ones we use to actually get stuff started up and ready to go. And so we can see right here inside the scenedelegate.swift, this is a new one for the Swift UI structure. That's how we can actually start up the actual application. It's like the runner of a Java program, but we don't have to write any code for it. It's already right there. We only have to make some changes if we're doing some advanced code for that, and that's right there. One thing we might have to change is right here, we can see on line 23 where I say let content view equals content view. And that's where I would change the name of my instance of my first GUI window that we're working with inside Swift UI to create an instance of that. But that's something we'll handle later on. We'll talk about it again as we go and do more advanced videos and how to do more stuff with Java. We'll do more advanced videos and how to do more stuff with Swift projects. But the basic thing right there is the only change you'd have to make is inside scenedelegate. Other than that, you're not going to worry about that. Same thing with appdelegate.swift. Unless you're doing advanced things with special configurations, you're not going to be using these files at all. So what we're going to do is go ahead and close that resources folder and get it out of the way. We then have our LaunchScreen.storyboard. This is where we would customize our app so we can have something start up the screen, like a nice little splash screen or something, so we can say, hey, what's going on? And we'll do that in other demo projects as well. But this is the one that we just load up the basic GUI when the app first turns on, the splash screen where you can put a logo or some quick little information about your app to have something happen. And we'll talk about that in other videos as well. But what we're going to do with that is we're going to right click on that file. We're going to go to add group from selection on this. And in the new group for this one, we'll just call this view, because this is where our custom view objects will be handled, and we can move it out of the way so we don't have to worry about it. And finally, the last one we're working on is the content view.swift. The content view.swift is where we do our first, how we build our Swift UI demo, and it uses a series of structs and objects to put that together. But again, we're going to put this into a folder so we can handle it, and this is where we do the controlling of the actual application. So we'll put this inside a new group from selection, but we're going to put the controller group on this one. Now, we have now our structure of our projects. We have a folder structure on here. We have a view, a controller, and resources. The model group is one we'd use for our custom objects, things that we're making for ourselves for our actual application. And we'll see that as we go along with that. But we'll go ahead and make that folder right now, even though we don't have anything to put inside that. So we just right click on there, and we go ahead and do a new group. We call it model. And that's where we put all of our custom objects we'll be working with inside our project, anything that we're using to make cool things and do stuff with. And that would be stored inside our model group as well. So we have our model view controller structure we use to organize our actual project itself. I can rerun my project again right here, hit stop to make sure it stops the existing project. It will rerun. As you can see, it's building my tasks. And as it builds its task, it builds succeeds. We're good. We have a new version again. It simply says hello world. And again, it takes so much less time the second time we run it. It's a great thing. So we've organized our project so we have our basic project structure. What we're going to be doing and how as we build our project is we'll be adding code to these three folders right here. The controller, the view, and the model. And most of the work we're going to be doing is going to be in the model and the controller folders because that's where we're going to be building our projects to go along with that. Again, on the left, we have our project navigator. This is the folder structure we handle with that. As you can see right here, there's some icons at the top of the screen. These are from the other navigators we use to actually look through the project. This is how we can find something inside our project using the search navigator. We have our problem navigator, so we can fill any problems we have. If you have, say, for example, an error, you click on this, you can go and explore it and fix things from there. We have our breakpoint navigator, so we can actually do a debug and step through our projects and go from that. And then we have our actual stack trace, so we can look and see what's happening inside the application itself as we go through. Great things we can use as we go and do our actual project execution. But the big one we're going to be using right here is the project navigator. Now, we can close this window by simply hitting Command 0 to close that window out of the way and give me a full give me a full screen available for the editor. The editor by default is where we'll do 99% of our work. Again, I like to have my squigs aligned vertically because I think it makes it very easy to see how we're structuring our code and what happens inside it. As you can see, we have my struct content view preview. This creates the content view that's specified up here in this previous struct. And you'll be making a basic Swift UI file for each of the different screens you're working with to handle what's going on. And this is where you'll be building all the components and working within that to have that happen. We'll talk about how to do that in the Swift UI demo video we'll be coming over next, but that's just the basic way of how we can handle that structure and work within it. And that's the basic thing for there. Now, as we can see right here, this is the editor window. This is how we can see what the code itself looks like. But we also often want to see what the code will look like when it runs. We access that with the canvas or the preview. And we do Alt-Command-Enter to have that open up right here. And it'll bring up the preview pane over on the right or the bottom. I prefer it on the right for my organization structure so I can see that. If you click on the resume button right here, it'll reset it so you can actually see the preview of that. And that's how we can see what's happening inside the different structs and components of the Swift UI. And as we make changes over here, they'll be reflected back and forth. It's a live interactive component we can work with. And again, we'll talk about that more when we go over the Swift UI demo, how we can make that work and how we can do cool stuff with that. But any changes I make right here and saying, wow, we can see that immediately changes right there, and we can make property changes for that. So this is the canvas pane. You can access also that up here by going to editor and go to the canvas. If you're doing older development or working with the launch screen, you'd use the assistant editor. But that's something that we're not going to be working with as much this year, but that's another way. If you look at my older videos, we were always using the assistant editor to make that happen. But that's where you can make that go for on that. Okay. Then we have over here, we also have, after I close this window, pull that back down, and I close that window, I have the right-hand side, the inspector pane. The inspector pane is where I can get lots of extra information. I can inspect and find out things about stuff. I can find out help files. This is how I can add properties or attributes of different components. And I can manipulate the pieces we're working with. And this is a really helpful tool. We use this all the time as we're doing the configuration and manipulation of how the GUI itself works. And that'll be happening over here in the inspector pane. And you can either open or close that with the top section up here, like I just did with clicking on that earlier, or Alt-Command-0 to open and close that window as well. So we can Alt-Command-0 opens and closes the right-hand side, and Command-0 opens and closes the left-hand side. Again, so we want to just do a quick review of what we did when we're working within the XCode environment. We talked about how we can create a project and how we can use the how we can create a project and use the project navigator on the left-hand window, so we can structure and see how we do that. We also talked about how we can organize our code into folders, so we can separate the roles of the files based on what they're doing, and we'll use a model view controller resources approach for all our projects. Even if they're really basic, we'll separate our files so they can understand what they work with on that. We can close that window by using Command-0. We can open and close the inspector pane with Alt-Command-0 to open and close that window as we need it to look more detailed on that. We use the editor to do all of our coding, all our major work we're working with for that. To open up the Canvas, we do Alt-Command-Enter to either open or close the preview window so we can actually see what we're working with. So when we're working with the GUI itself, we're working with the GUI controller, we can see the live view of that on the right with Alt-Command-Enter, so we can separate that out and open that up. Close it again by using the same sequence of Alt-Command-Enter again, so we can open that up, and that's for using the new Swift UI. If we want to use the older style of code, we're going to use the Assistant Editor, and that one's going to go up to the Editor window, and then Assistant Editor. So we have on this, it's going to be Control-Alt-Command-Enter to open and close that one. So Control-Alt-Command-Enter to open and close that. And that'll open and close that window as necessary if we're using the older style of user interface design. But we're going to be using Swift UI for most of what we're working on in class, and so that's Alt-Command-Enter to open and close the preview pane or the canvas so we can see what's happening for that. So that's the basic structure of how we can create a project and make that happen. Again, you want to make sure when you're working on this, you use the process of committing off into GitHub, uploading the project, and keep adding that to as we go along. We'll talk more about that as we go through and build better projects. We can access those and run those projects, and again, have those happen and do a great thing. So again, just a quick review. When we're opening up our folders, we use that navigator window on the left-hand side to structure that out. Our model is where we put all our custom components we're making to actually demonstrate what we're working with as our project. Our resources folder is where we put all the files we're not going to use on a regular basis other than assets.exe assets. And the controller is where we put all of our components that we use for the GUI control to handle the interaction between the user and the UI. And then in the view is where we do our custom UI components. We can access and create those and work with them as necessary, such as the storyboard approach for the older style of iOS development. That's where we're going to be building our projects and how we're going to be working with that. Again, we'll go more into detail so we can use Xcode and do some really cool things. But this is a great start so we can keep a look at that and make some cool things as we go along. Thanks again. Have a great day. Bye.